Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. This Devil's Den State Park killing is just so baffling and so horrific. And we're learning about some red flags in regards to this man you see on the screen, James McGann, who was a fourth or fifth grade school teacher and apparently had and lost 3 prior jobs. And this job he was going to get, or he was hired for in Arkansas, was his 4th job. So what were the red flags? What were the reasons that he wasn't lasting in a school, that he was suspended and kicked out? Was it inappropriate behavior? And specifically, was it inappropriate behavior towards a certain sex of student? I'm alluding to female students, young little girls. It was alleged that he favored them over the male students, and this was reported. And apparently, that was one of the reasons that he was given his walking papers. So 3 schools, it seemed, in a very short period of time. And the school that he was hired to work at in Arkansas was going to be the 4th school. So these are definitely red flags that should draw our attention to this. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your thoughts. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel will satisfy all your sports betting needs. They will highlight your team. They will give you the odds. They will give you a fair point spread. They will allow you to bet the under-over and give you statistics and everything you will need to know about an upcoming game between your favorite teams. FanDuel for all your sports betting needs. So, folks, this guy, James McGann, I mean, again, we've seen this footage here that he was arrested inside a barber shop, but there was a mom of a former student that went on News Nation, and she spoke about how horrified she was of this individual, James McGann. And I'm going to play a little bit of this right now so we can hear just what her concerns were.
Various parents of children that my son went to school with news articles that had McGann's mugshot on them. And I was just absolutely shaken that Kristen and Clinton Brink were brutally murdered, allegedly by the hands of the man that my son was around every day at his elementary school. While my son wasn't in his class, McGann was not his regular teacher. He was occasionally in his classroom on Fridays, and it was chilling to realize that he was around someone that could do this.
Yeah, and I mean, when we look at the photos, now there's photos of him smiling, on his social media, right? We have seen some pictures of him where he looks a little, friendlier, but what we're seeing here are the mugshots and the DMV picture, and we're seeing him go into jail. These are new images and new video that we're getting. What can you tell us about how McGann first came to teach in your district? Because I know when we get a teacher, we'll get an email and they describe who they are, what their interests are. Did you get that sort of sense from him? Did you get an introduction? How did you get to know this guy?
Yeah, we had nearly half of our elementary school teachers leave our school in May of 2022 for some reason, and we don't know. And so the school had to replace them throughout the summer. And so we were introduced to multiple teachers going into the fall on the school's Facebook page, and there was a post from Andrew McGann on there introducing himself. He was holding a cat. He looked super friendly, very young. In his post, he mentioned that he loves to run, and he was asking for go-to trails to run on, which is just chilling now to think of where these murders occurred. But you know, I saw him at school events, and he looked charismatic. He looked like the kids enjoyed being around him. They flocked to him. He was always hanging out with the fourth graders. It wasn't for a while that we started to see some red flags in things that happened in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that, you know, the younger teacher, the cool guy trying to fit in.
You know, you might ask, what is the vetting process for someone to get hired as an elementary school teacher? Certainly, I would imagine every state, the candidate must be fingerprinted, and the fingerprints must clear. So the school district is not hiring a sex offender or a multiple felon. So I would imagine that's the very least. Is there any kind of psychological tests? And no doubt there's got to be a personal interview. There's got to be the vetting of the person's background and their educational background. But that's one of the questions we should be asking. Are these checks enough? And are we vetting school teachers that are going to be teaching young children? Are we vetting them enough so that we don't get a James McCabe? And maybe this wasn't preventable, but maybe it was. There were red flags. I mean, he taught at 3 schools in a very short period of time, and he was suspended and asked to leave. I would imagine that if they did a deep dive into the reasons why he was asked to leave from these schools, that would perhaps give us the answers and answer some of these red flags that we're undoubtedly receiving.
And get along with these younger children. I mean, it's happened before, and usually everything turns out all right. But now we're in a different situation here. As the school year went on, you know, how would you grade him as a teacher? I mean, was he a good teacher?
Yeah, so again, my son wasn't with him every day.
Right, but
so
on the
I
Fridays.
was having regular interactions with him. He was occasionally in his classroom, and when my son would come home and I would ask him, what did you do today? The general answer is, if he was with Mr. McGann, I was on my iPad. I had free iPad time today to play games, or one day they watched the World Cup. So I didn't feel like my son was getting a whole lot of instruction. And then he started to talk to me about just things that a 10-year-old might say that stuck out to him. You know, Mr. McGann, you know, loves to play tag at recess. He plays truth or dare with the girls. You know, and then I started hearing these things like he's giving out candy. He gives candy out in class, but really it's for the girls. Or, you know, he's bringing Sonic drinks sometimes to special girls in the class. And these are the sort of things that started unrolling throughout the year that got our spidey senses up as parents.
So it definitely sounds like almost like grooming these students rather than teaching them, giving candy, drinks to certain girls. Truth or dare, is that appropriate for a elementary school teacher to be playing with the female students in his class? I would say no. So these are undoubtedly red flags that we're seeing. And obviously it was reported to the school because he didn't last very long in any of these schools. 3 schools in a very short period of time, and then hired to a 4th school in Arkansas. And, you know, we question the attacks, in the Devil's Den State Park, was he targeting the adults or was he targeting the young girls, the 7 and 9-year-old? Was he targeting Clinton Brink and Kristen Brink, or was he targeting those young girls? And think of how heroic these two people are, Clinton and Kristen Brink, that they fought this guy off who was armed with a knife. And Kristen guided her daughters to safety and then came back to help her husband. And that decision cost her life. Just, I mean, a horrific attack. Like, how can you even imagine something like this happening in a peaceful state park where people go to walk the trails with their children? Just absolutely outrageous.
Right. I mean, no kidding. I mean, talk about red flags, bringing candy. I mean, this like just goes down that checklist of concerns. What did school officials do when those concerns were reported? You must have, you and other parents went to the school and said, hey, there's something not right here.
So parents of girls who felt like their daughters were being groomed, who were in his class on a regular basis, went to the district. Some of these parents went to the school and the principal and the district and said, hey, there are inappropriate things happening in the classroom. My a daughter sat in his lap in the classroom. A child overheard him speaking to a girl that he wished he could date her when she grew up.
What age?
These girls were 9 and 10.
Oh my gosh.
Things that they were seeing. And so these parents of these girls did go to the district and did go to the school and complained of this. And from what we were told, McGann was placed on an administrative leave in early May of 2023. And then there was an email announcement sent out that after he had been placed on administrative leave, there was an internal investigation that was done, that no inappropriate actions were found to have taken place, but that his classroom management was below standards for the district and that he had showed some favoritism towards students. But then they noted that he had tendered his resignation to HR. And so what we don't know is, was any disciplinary action ever taken? Was he reported to CPS? Was he reported to the state board regarding his teaching certificate?
You know, this sounds like the way, and I apologize if I offend anyone, but the way certain religions deal with clergy in the pedophile problem, where they would, instead of reporting it to law enforcement, they would just transfer the person who was suspected of taking part in really illegal activity, and they would just transfer this person. It sounds like these school districts were doing the same exact thing, that they were just transferring this person that was committing these inappropriate acts with young girls, 9 years old in this case. I mean, could you imagine if you were a parent and you heard that some teacher said he'd like to date your daughter who was 9 years old? I think that would be quite a good reason for them to get rid of this guy. And they did an internal investigation. Well, how do we know that if he was ever a suspect in any of these things before, if you just do an internal investigation and don't put it out there for the world to see? Transparency. Oh yes, this guy did the same thing at this school, or he did the same thing at that school. But yet we'll never find that out, because perhaps, some of these teachers are protected by the teachers union, and the school is limited as to the course of action they can actually take. But this is very, very disturbing. James McCabe, right? A teacher going on his 4th school in a short period of time. He certainly looks, in this thumbnail that we have up on the screen, he certainly looks disturbed in that. And this one too, he looks disturbed to the point where he now is known as the Devil's Den murderer, the accused murderer, I'll put it that way. Absolutely horrific. So for those that ask, were there red flags? Yeah, you bet there were. You bet there was no red flags perhaps indicating that he was going to become a murderer, but there were red flags that he shouldn't have been teaching young kids. He shouldn't have been an elementary school teacher. And perhaps if the schools would have appropriately, and maybe that's too strong a word, maybe if they would have been more transparent in regards to what they found out in their investigation, it perhaps should have been reported to law enforcement and not just an internal investigation. And they were probably thrilled that he resigned, and who knows, maybe they told him, you better resign or we're going to fire you. We'll give you the choice. You resign. It doesn't look bad if you resign. If we fire you, it's a stain and you're going to have to explain that when you apply for your next job. So absolutely there were red flags in this case.
We don't know. It was all internal and it wasn't released.
And how do you find that stuff out now? I mean, I assume that you guys might be circling back to get some answers now that this horrific crime has taken place across state lines. You guys must have so many questions, and also when he was no longer teaching students, parents maybe felt a sense of relief, but then, there needs to be the follow-up, right?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want as a parent is for your kid to have anything less than a stellar year due to adults or an adult that they were around in the school. And so I think all of the parents were a bit relieved when we found out he had left and we could finish out the year and have a little bit of normalcy and peace, and not constantly hearing these rumors circulating through the kids about Mr. McGann and things that were going on. I feel like some of these children have still dealt with some of these issues for the past few years, just the trauma that they dealt with, feeling like they were groomed in some way, these girls were. And so it's all come back now. We're having these conversations again that we haven't had in 2.5 years of, oh my goodness, he left us. Where did he go next? We never heard the rest of the story. And now we're hearing the rest of the story. And it's terrifying to learn.
It is. And last question, how is your son holding up after learning the news, and his friends and the other parents? I mean, everybody must be talking in your town.
He's mostly concerned about the children who lost their parents. Mm-hmm. He's concerned about the girls he went to school with who dealt with and still deal with trauma from this. He wants to know how they're doing, how they're holding up. And he asked me yesterday, how is it that a teacher at my school in my grade turned out to be a murderer? And nobody knew this back then. It's been really unsettling for him.
That's really quite scary for any kid. Just, I mean, you can't, how do you, how does a kid make any sense of that? How does an adult make any sense of that this person who was teaching at my daughter's school is a murderer? How do you make any sense of that whatsoever? I think it's outrageous. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And I'm not going to totally blame it on the schools. What is the system that the schools, whereby the schools do their own internal investigation without the assistance, if it comes to the level of calling law enforcement in, is that okay that they do their own investigation? I don't know. Folks, this is brought to you by FanDuel, a sports betting conglomerate, and you can get the best news on all your sports teams, the bets, the lines, the under-over, and follow all the statistics in the NFL, Major League Baseball, and get all the latest news from FanDuel, a sponsor for Police Off the Cuff. I want to play this. This is from the Today Show. We'll get a little different angle on this right now.
Newly released video of the suspect accused in a horrifying double murder in Arkansas shows him being booked into jail after his arrest. Prosecutors say Andrew James McGann admitted to killing Clinton and Kristen Brink, the doting parents of 3 young children, while they were on a family hike at Devil's Den State Park.
He made statements indicating that he had committed these heinous acts.
According to a report released by prosecutors, a witness at the park where the couple was killed saw a man with blood on his face driving off in a black Kia Stinger. Authorities say they located that car outside of a local barbershop where McGann was getting a haircut.
I had chills as soon as I kind of saw through the hair that was in his forehead. I saw his brims of his eyes. They were very sunken.
Prosecutors also saying McGann had cuts on his hand and that police found what appeared to be blood inside of his car. According to those authorities, they were later able to match DNA from McGann's hair to blood found at the crime scene. Police say they believe McGann attacked the father first while his wife tried to save their daughters.
We believe that the mother took them to safety and then returned to help her husband.
Investigators say they found no connection between the suspect and the victims. It comes as NBC News has learned McGann taught at 4 schools in 4 years, including Texas, where Sierra Markham said her son was in his 4th grade class. What kind of things did your son see that made him so upset?
So he told me that him and several classmates had noticed Mr. McGann paying extra attention to certain girls in class. He was just very touchy, always touching them, hugging them.
The school district says they found no evidence of inappropriate behavior, but placed McGann on administrative leave for classroom management and judgment issues in 2023 before he resigned in May of that year. All right, so here's the latest, guys. Andrew McGann is expected in court today for a bond hearing. NBC News has not been able to reach an attorney for him for comment. Investigators say they do have a search warrant for McGann's home and car. They are hoping it is going to provide some clues as to why he allegedly committed this terrible crime. Back to you.
Sam, thank you very much.
So again, we don't need the Today Show to tell us how terrible of a crime this is. But this case, as far as the case against James McGann, they have his blood in the crime scene, as well as the victim's blood inside his car. And in addition, he confessed. This is a rock solid case. And when we talk about and look at this case and ask, the why, the why did this happen? And could it have been prevented if there was a more diligent school district? 3 school districts he worked for. This would have been his 4th job in 4 years, this job he got at an elementary school in Arkansas. We have to be extremely concerned about that and how teachers are vetted and how, when they are found to be inappropriate, at what point does it become necessary to report that conduct to law enforcement? Surely, if it crosses the line and it's against the law. But we have school administrators who it's in the school district's interest and their interest to sort of sweep this under the rug so the school doesn't get a bad reputation in regards to hiring someone like this, who obviously was and is a threat to those students. He exhibited classic grooming behavior. Could it be that he is a pedophile? These are some of the questions that need to be asked. And how did he graduate from this type of aberrant behavior to a double murder of the parents of 2 young girls? And in fact, was he targeting these 2 young girls, 7 and 9 years old, and the parents were just in the way? I think that's a question that really needs to be asked. It's a question that I would have asked in the interview when he confessed to these murders. News Nation.
in some of these other states. And we've heard stories about inviting 9-year-old girls into the classroom to have lunch with him and giving them treats and candy and Sonic drinks and stuff like that. So I think that that's just really odd that he chose a family, a mom and a dad with 2 girls about the age of the kids that he was teaching. But we'll find out more about that later as we move through the story. At this point, what are locals saying that this alleged killer has been caught? What's the mood like? Are people relieved? Are they mad? Because he was about to start teaching school, right?
There's a sense of relief and a sense of anger at some point. The community is happy that he has certainly been found, and a big pat on the back to the authorities and the investigators that spent countless hours and 24 hours, 48 hours working this job and eventually bringing this alleged killer to justice. But the issue with it is this seemed to be a random attack. It wasn't an issue of domestic violence. This was purely random, and it's certainly going to be something that sticks on the mind of really anyone on the trails in Northwest Arkansas for some time to come.
You know, I think he's right. I think this Tony Bruschi is right. It was random. However, it was random, but it was premeditated. You don't tape up your license plate with tape before you enter this park unless you had bad intentions. So he was planning on doing this attack. So random, yeah, random vis-a-vis the victims, but premeditated, planning to try to get away with it by taping your license plate up. So yeah, so we got to be very concerned about this. And again, who was he targeting? There were reports that he passed one group of people and he sort of freaked them out, but there was 5 adults in that group. Perhaps he thought he wouldn't be successful in the attack against 5 adults. And then the group, of course, with Clinton Brink and Kristen Brink and their 2 little girls, that's the group he decided to attack. So very curious.
And before I let you go, Tony, I mean, again, you have done such a fantastic job, and for us as well. We thank you for your perspective, but I also understand that you've been taking some heat for your reporting on the attacks. So what's up with that?
Well, a little bit about that. And first, I want to say my reporting has never been to insult the investigators and everyone who is working this case very diligently. It's more so on the fundamentals of the bureaucracy that handles it. The issues were 6 hours with the people in the park not having any notice that there was a homicide that was committed, and then 3 days of phone lines not working. People came to us expressing their leads, expressing what they saw, which ultimately led to the police sketch that we all saw and more detailed descriptions of the vehicle from our reporting that we handed directly over to authorities. So us calling them out on those issues of the 3 days with no phone line, that was simply to help. I'm sorry that it upsets some people, but clearly a glaring issue that hopefully in the future can be addressed, and we don't have to have that again should there be another emergency where people need to get information to authorities. They come to them first and not a podcaster.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that people are glad that they know that this was going on before they went out on a hike. You did a public service, and I know that many people are thankful for your reporting. Tony Bruschi, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
He actually did do a good job on this. He also obtained the video of the vehicle fleeing the park. That surely helped. And I think sometimes social media can sort of shake up witnesses that may be reluctant to speak to the police, but they'll hand stuff over or send stuff to a content creator on social media. So I think his reporting did help in this case. Of course, the police want to 100% handle this case themselves, but in this one, I think it helped. It helped, again, make this sketch, which some people now are very critical. Oh, it doesn't look anything like him. But you got to realize the sketch is made from the recollection of a witness. And the sketch artist just draws what he's told by a witness. So I also want to say at this point, prayers go out to Clinton and Kristen Brink, who surely are American heroes, saving their children. And Kristen Brink going back to try to save her husband. Just the bravery is unbelievable, you know. Going back, and she knew he was being attacked by some psycho, this man with a knife, who turned out to be a school teacher. Really tough to understand, tough to wrap your head around this. But let's just thank God that he was arrested, he was caught. So, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you can, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share us, and make plenty of comments about this case. I'm sure many people have opinions on it. Have a great day, everyone. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. See you next time, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.